Welcome back to the Tuxes and Tomahawks podcast. I am Adam Dorito, and by the time this episode posts out, we've just gotten back from France, but I wanted to make sure I got all these awesome guests in before I left for a few weeks here. So, Morgan Lerette, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, dude, thanks for having me. The intro video reminded me of like the late 80s, early 90s, where you'd look at static and hope you'd see like a titty and a nipple.
Yeah, that's the entire point.
Nice.
Yeah, so everyone loved, I was like, where did you get this intro video? I'm like, so I got this dude. I'm like, I need something that says we all go to the embassy party, because in civil affairs, that's what we do. We just infiltrate governments and we hang out at all the fancy parties and then overthrow foreign governments without blowing them up. So I'm like, I need something that involves that and all the modern politicians. And the kid came up with that. I'm like, this is actually fucking hilarious. I'm like, I don't know how you did this. Like, that's way above my pay grade because I'm really dumb when it comes to social media, but this is great. So, dude, I'm really honored to have you on the show. I've had to work with your prior organization in the past, and a lot of my friends have, and not a lot of people get a big insight to the things that you guys actually did. I mean, everyone just talks about a bunch of you guys hanging off a bridge somewhere in Iraq and it caused a bunch of chaos with Eric Prince. But other than that, like, you are one of the guys. You were a Blackwater operator back in the day. So just to start off, like, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you even decide that this was a good idea? What did you do as a young boy? Did you torture young animals and like set off too many firecrackers and toilet poles? Like, what did you do?
I mean, dude, I was the epitome of like the white trash, small town USA kid. So,
yeah.
So it's not shocking that I found this career path. But dude, I was, 1999. I graduated from high school, small town USA. It was either go work construction or go join the military. And I was like, piss on it. So I joined the Air Force Security Forces. Now, I didn't even have the balls to go active duty because I was like, I don't really want to do that. So I joined and I end up like 9/11 happens and we get activated for 2 years. My life just completely changes. It's like going from, go to college, which is, what every white trash kid is told to do. Go to college and you're going to be fine.
That's what the boomers told us to do. That's what they told us to do, Morgan.
They're like, dude, you should really get that degree in psychology. It's going to help you out. But I got activated after September 11th with the National Guard. They had a bunch of like former Force Recon Marine guys because they all joined the National Guard thinking, hey, college money, same reason everybody else did.
A lot of Marines joined the Guard.
Dude, we were fucked, right? So one of my best friends from that, I talk about him in the book. His name is Tony in the book. He's like watching the footage of Blackwater get hanged off the bridge. And he's like, I'm going to go work for Blackwater. And I was like, have fun. Like, that sounds like a good way to die, bro. And he's like, come on, dude, I'll get you in. And I was like, dude, I'm security forces. I'm not cool. Like, you're a Force Recon Marine. Go do it. He goes to Moyock, North Carolina. They literally were just saying, hey, if you know anybody that would be good in the pocket, give us a phone number. We'll give them a call. I got a call the next day. They're like, come on out. Do the training. If you pass, we'll send you to Baghdad. Literally no thought. I put no thought into this.
Perfect.
I wish I could sit there and say, like,
how old are you at the time?
I was 23 years old.
Excellent decision-making time frame. Yes.
Yeah,
perfect.
Exactly.
I love where this is going.
They're like, for $550 a day, you want to do this? And I was like, fuck yeah, man. I'm single. Let's go do it. That sounds like an adventure. Now, here's the thing that you don't realize, that most people don't. The guys that went to work for Blackwater are all the dudes that joined between like 1980, 85. They missed Panama. They might have got a little bit of action in Desert Storm, but probably not, right? That was like a 4-second war. So you have all these dudes that are sitting there. They're trained to go to war. They wanted to go to war. They never got to go to war. And Blackwater's like, how about $550 a day? You get to go get your war on.
Way more than the military is paying you.
Yeah. So, dude, I mean, I was like, shit, I think I had just made E5. But still, it was like all these guys wanted to get their war on. They finally got their option. So it's like me, security forces, Force Recon Marines, Special Operations. You got your Navy SEALs, pararescue, all these guys, and then there's just little dumpy Morgan. I'm like, just put me in a car and I'll point a gun at shit. So, dude, that's literally how I got in. Like, I wish I could sit there and say I had this cool story, but no.
Well, the requirements elevated way later on. Like, I think for like my generation, because like I saw the towers get hit. I was in 8th grade at the time, right? So like 5 years later, I joined the military in 2006, right? But it's just later on the requirements were a little bit harder to get in. When things are really clipping off. But I mean, you got in like the golden age of Blackwater because it was like no rules, no cell phones, no Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, no GoPros. So like the rules were a little bit different back then. Things kind of happened and no one really had to know about it.
Oh, dude, like the first deployment we were on, they talk about, oh, here's your rules of engagement. And this is like the chain of command. And this is, dude, you get to Blackwater and they're like, there's your gun. Go grab that. Have as much ammo as you want.
If they're shooting at you, shoot back.
Yeah, well, dude, it was like, get this guy from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And whenever you got to do that, just make it happen. So you have all these guys that are like, dude, not only not digital, we didn't have GPS, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were looking at paper maps. We had a big paper map on the table. We'd be like, yeah, we'll take these routes and get over there. Half the routes are already blocked because something blew up the day before.
Sure.
So it's literally like, get guys from point A to point B. And if a car comes up on you, it could be a car bomb. What are you going to do? Dude, you shoot at it. So I would like to sit here and say like we weren't savages. We were absolutely savages to a certain extent. But at the same time, when you're rocking and rolling with Colin Powell or the ambassador to Iraq and a car screaming up on you and everybody's blowing up themselves with car bombs, like that's how you react. So yeah, I mean, Blackwater definitely, we massaged that reputation. We took it by its cojones and we just massaged and loved it. And
every boy's dream.
We ran roughshod over Iraq. We just absolutely did. People were like, oh, we weren't that bad. I'm like, dude, it's on fucking YouTube, bro. Like I was in those convoys. I remember it. We did that.
Yeah. No, and it was necessary. I mean, for people who don't remember like the early part of the war, like, some of these guys learned their lesson from the first Gulf War, right? And they knew that going force on force, conventional versus the best conventional military in the world, because Iraq had the 3rd largest military in the world at the time, or close to that. Not a good idea. Like they lost a lot of tanks, lost a lot of dudes, like in 100 hours. It was a 100-hour air campaign, and like that country was gone. So they knew like coming in the second time, like it's going to be insurgencies, it's going to be VBIDs, it's going to be IEDs, it's going to be counterinsurgency, like completely different playbook. And unfortunately, for the U.S. military, and you guys know this, like our hands are tied on certain things. Things were different in the beginning of the war, but like there needed to be other groups in the area that could do things that we could not, right? Because that was necessary in order to combat some of these forces in that area. So,
yeah. So here's the shit show, dude. And I'm gonna give a little history lesson here. So we went into Panama. We were there for like 17 minutes or whatever the fuck it was, and then we handed it over to an interim government, and we had diplomacy. So somewhere in our heads, in our collective noodles, we were like, we can win wars with diplomacy. So that's what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq. We literally went in there and said, let's get you guys a new government. We're going to hand it over to you guys. And now it's a diplomatic mission. Now, if you spent any time in Afghanistan or Iraq, it was a DOD mission. It was a military mission. But you had to have the diplomacy. Now, the State Department does not have people to protect them. They do. You saw those guys when like President Trump almost got assassinated. Most of them were twats, right?
Yeah.
So you're going into an active combat zone. You don't have personal protection that you can grab internally. So what do? You go and you outsource that. And that's exactly why Blackwater exists. They said we need 489 people to protect these diplomats all around Baghdad, all around Iraq. Fucking get them on ground. So yeah. And dude, I was lucky. Like people say, oh, what'd you do before? I was Air Force Security Forces. Like, dude, it's not that cool. But sometimes it pays to know the guy that's getting ready to start Amazon or Microsoft, dude. I was on the ground level.
Yeah, and you were there like when Eric Prince was like, really into the organization, and things, before they had to change all the names and all the all that weird stuff went on. They had like, oh, we're like Z now, or then like the triple canopy guys and like all this other stuff, right? So it's tell me, what was it like on the ground? Like you're fresh out of security forces, you're going over there. You was either going to construction, join the military. And now you're living every young boy's dream, so to speak, is that you're going to war at 23 years old and you're just smoke checking dudes and living out what every guy who joins the military thinks they're going to do. Then they realize they're glorified janitors. I doubt there was a lot less floor sweeping in your Blackwater experience than most guys have had in the infantry, in the army and stuff. But I mean, like, what was that experience like? What was it like your first time on ground in your first mission?
Dude, it was a shit show. So I got there. I was on the 4th class that ever graduated from Blackwater. They called it DSS. I don't know what the fuck, WIPS contract. You could, who knows what that stuff. It's like Worldwide Protective Services. Mm-hmm. So when I got on ground, the people that were there that were like helping us train and operate had been on ground for like 2 weeks. So you essentially just had the blind leading the blind. Yeah. The good thing is that it was all big boy rules. There was no like buddy check. Oh, check to make sure you have ammo and water and dude, all the shit that I hated with the Air Force and the Army later on. Yeah. None of that existed. It was like you show up at this time, you're ready to roll. They didn't say, oh, show up 15 minutes early for this. Dude, anybody that went to like a formation where they say, be here at 8 a.m. and then they're like, okay, be here at 7:45 and then be here at 7:30. Next thing you know, it's fucking 4:30 in the morning. You're standing there. Nobody's going to do anything till 8. None of that horse shit. It's just straight up like, we're leaving at 8. You're a big boy. Get over here. We're going to be in the cars. We're driving out at 8 a.m. Gone. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, dude, no restrictions, right? No rules of engagement. I'll tell you a story. It was like it was probably like the 3rd run I'd ever been on. We had this Marine Corps sniper in the back. He pops open the door to the Suburban and he's trying to fuck off traffic, right? You yell, Imshi, Imshi. Imshi. That's what you yell. I don't know what the fuck it means still. I could probably Google it. But you yell an Imshi. These guys aren't like leaving because for some reason they think that they're in like the goddamn Baghdad 500 and they just got to keep creeping up to figure out who's going to win the race. So he finally says something really cool and is like, going hot. And he pops it off safe. He clips his car. The car takes off. Now, our team leader at the time, who I call Funk Faker because he faked the funk, dude. He was like, I'm the coolest, baddest motherfucker ever. And it turns out he was just a liar. There was a lot of that in Blackwater. But
I'm assuming there would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So he takes us back and he's like, all right, we got to write a report. The only thing that taught us is don't fucking tell anybody when you go hot. Because if you have to write a report, then somebody's going to read this report. They're going to second guess your shoot. And dude, we are in a very precarious legal situation, right? Like, yeah, we're U.S. civilians in a combat zone working for the State Department. We're not under the UCMJ. We're not under the Geneva Convention because we're not in uniform. We're not under anything that anybody knows of. So the last thing you want is somebody with like the legal eagle sitting on your shoulder saying, well, would you have shot? Well, dude, fucking, you were sitting here in the green zone, all right? At the big embassy.
LOAC doesn't apply. Law of armed conflict, for those who don't understand that.
Yeah, so fucking, dude, at that point, we just realized, don't tell anybody anything. Don't report anything. Because if you do, it's gonna take more time and somebody's going to second guess you. So, dude, that's how we rolled, right? You trust everybody on your team. And then, like, when I was on the QRF, Eric Prince says, oh, we only shot like 50 times over the course of like 5-year contract. And I was like, bitch, we did that in a week. Yeah. Like we were shooting and scooting, man. Like, because how else do you reach out and touch somebody that doesn't know how to drive, that won't move for your horn, won't move when you hit their vehicle, dude? Sometimes you got to give them a little chef kiss with the old M4. So that literally no rules of engagement. And the people that tell you that they were really restrictive and stuff, maybe that came later, dude. In 04, 05, it was just straight up like, get this guy from point A to point B. Oh, you shot at somebody.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, where did you guys source your weapons from? Did they come from the U.S. military? Were they privately bought? Because, I mean, you guys obviously had very good weapon systems, compared to what you can buy at your local gun store. So, like, where did you guys source a lot of your equipment from?
It's funny you say that because a lot of the shit at the local gun stores now, 20 years later, is way cooler than the shit we had.
It probably, yeah.
But at the time, I mean, we all had M4s. They were all sourced through God knows what, but they were issued by the State Department. Mm-hmm. And we had Glock 19, so the 9mm Glocks. Those are your two primaries. And then we started off with like the 249, just the regular old pig, right?
Yeah.
And then we got the 240 Bravos, but that was it. We never had anything heavier than that. All that said, it's not hard to find guns in the streets of Baghdad. It's just not
I
that
just picked
difficult.
this up. Oh, what's this? This is a Dragunov? How convenient. That's going right in the back of my freaking, whatever you were driving around.
Oh, dude,
You
Dragunov
guys steal a lot of
AKs.
Hiluxes?
We had, Hiluxes.
I would stole a couple.
Dude, I still want one of those.
Yeah, I do want one, dude. That's all we drove around in overseas. I'm like, how do we not have these? These are like the greatest fucking vehicles ever. You know what I mean? Like they're like the mountain goats. They're like basically they're Tacomas with diesel motors in them. So
yeah, or the Land Rover. It's not the Defender. I can't remember. Whatever.
I know which one you're talking about. And they had like some of the those really square bodied Land Cruisers that you can't get out here either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're like the really cool ones. You're like, and how the hell did you fit that many guys and that much stuff in? And the suspension still works. And somehow you guys are like, it got shot like 14 times and it's still moving. You're like, man, these things are they're literal freaking rocks. Like I love those trucks. They're great. So
dude, those and fucking bongo trucks are made of I think kryptonite. Trucks. Like that's the only thing I can think of. They're like absolutely kryptonite. But the other thing we could do is we always had access to alcohol, right? So when I say the rules don't apply, like the rules don't apply. Like you get done with your run, you go to the pool, you start getting wasted. But you could go over to pretty much any military installation, and like the green zone's big. And then there's all these little army installations within the green zone. So you can go over there with a little bit of the Devil's Honeydew, a little Jack Daniels, and say, hey, I'm looking for some up armor, or I'm looking for a 50 cal, or I'm looking, dude, you would be shocked at what you could get. My buddy was driving around in a Suburban, light-skinned Suburban with an AT4 in the back. And I was like, what the fuck do you need this for? And he's like, why not?
Yeah, you never know.
All right, whatever, dude. So even though like we got issued stuff, it just wasn't hard. I talk about it in the book, one of the guys that was our team lead, dude, he had a full-on 50 cal. He had Dragunovs. He had like 30 weapons. It was like his own little weapons cache that he just collected over time. And then somebody from the State Department, when he was leaving, was like, where the fuck did he get all these weapons? And nobody knew, and they weren't on anybody's books. So the problem is that you got all these military weapons, and they're like, who do we give these back to? And the military's like, I'm not fucking touching those. I don't know who they belong to. Don't give them back to me. Like they literally just sat in the storage locker. Because the bureaucracy. I miss it.
Yeah. So talk about that. Like that's an interesting turn point there is like the bureaucracy that you had to deal with as a contractor with the U.S. military, with contingent operations. Like, was it easy to work with, active duty guys over there or the Guard Reserve, whoever's deployed, or like, did that hem you guys up in certain things, or how did you guys were able to communicate and actually like go through with operations? Because like that just sounds like an absolute nightmare. I mean, it was a nightmare when I was over there, and that was way later than you were. So I can't imagine what it was like in the beginning years when you guys were stealing each other's shit, taking stuff off each other's trucks. You know what I mean? Like nobody's talking about it. Nobody, the supply sergeant's losing his mind because there's nowhere his AT4 went because it's in the back of some Suburban that nobody was.
My buddy Tony's got it.
Yeah, Johnson's got it over there.
Dude, it's so. I talk about it that it's big boy rules, but at the same time, there's no support, right? There is no, like we had 2 little birds in Baghdad. I think we had 3, but 2 in the air at any given time. You had a QRF, but it was usually like there was a dedicated team. There was a QRF that could be in and out at any given moment. And the moment that we left Baghdad, there's no radio comms. There's nothing. So we had sat phones, like if something really bad happened, but dude, if you've ever used a sat phone, it's like 50-50. You're like holding it up in the air like it's
you're doing this.
Like it's the 90s. So that's the downfall of it, right? Is that we didn't actually go through the process of coordinating with military units. So the best stories I always hear is like, oh, I remember Blackwater. We shot at you guys once. Bitch, you guys are the worst shots ever. Like none of us ever got hit. Like you guys are either terrible or you're making it up, or probably more accurate is there's 1,000 PMCs on the ground at any given time. And there's 1,000 civilians. Dude, there were civilians over there rescuing dogs, like driving fucking hot convoys to rescue dogs. I know this because I rescued a dog. So without that coordination, we didn't have any backup. It was just you and like the 12, 13 people on the road with you. We didn't have Blue Force trackers. I remember when those came out. They came out. Dude,
the fucking dome. Yeah, the fucking dome spaceship sitting on top of your fucking vehicle.
Well, they gave us these, and you're supposed to put them. It looked kind of like this. You set it on your thing, and then you push 1 for when I'm leaving, 2 where I get there, 2 when I leave there, 3 when I go to my next place. Dude, it was like all these push button things. And we finally just got to a point where we're like, fuck it, dude. I don't know if I push the right buttons. Who gives a shit? There was no way to track us. So, yes, we ran up on military convoys all the time. There's not a whole lot of people in Suburbans and Land Cruisers over there that weren't like U.S. civilians doing some kind of a job. But there was, when I say there's no coordination, I mean fucking no coordination. Like,
did that cause like any like green on blue incidences to you guys, or did that you guys get like into anything because you guys weren't keeping track of things with intercoordinated or interagency operations?
Yeah, so we had a dude, this was April of 2005. So we had a helicopter go down and it killed 6 of our guys. A couple of them I knew. That was a bummer day. And then there was another guy that was driving in an armored vehicle down to Ramadi. I think it was from Baghdad towards Ramadi. Gets hit by an EFP, and they tried to use the sat phone. They tried everything. They can't get a hold of anybody. This guy's literally bleeding out. And they had to go and find like the closest Marine checkpoint that was underneath a bridge in order to get them to escort them to the next base. So like that's one of those things that shows like if we had coordinated better, could that have actually like helped? Could it have saved a life? I mean, who knows? That's the hard part of it. But there was always instances where I remember we were taking a left in Baghdad and we popped up on this convoy and this guy's got like a 240 Bravo in the back. Remember those Humvees where like they were like trucks in the back and you'd put put like a little apparatus and you'd be able to
we don't do that anymore, but yes.
Yeah. Well, that's too cool. So dude, the guy's like holding us off and we're like, you know, we have VS17 panels, which is just like a neon orange thing that you put. Yeah. And we're like, hey, it's us. Can we go around? And the guy's like, no. And we're like, oh. So we did the Iraqi thing. We're like, we'll just squeeze around you. And he takes a 240 Bravo and goes, points it at us. We're like, we're good, dude. But the armor is not going to stop that motherfucker. So, dude, it happened. It happened quite a bit. But for the most part, we all kind of looked out for each other, right? Like if there was a military convoy on the side of the road, we'd stop. When we got into an accident, we had 2 of our Suburbans hit each other. Big army happened to be coming by just out of luck. And they stopped all the traffic while we sat there and we put the tow ropes on and we dragged it in. They let me hang off the side of their Humvee. I felt like a bad motherfucker. I'm like sitting there hanging off the side like Rambo in the red zone. So I know that people talk about the animosity between the two, but you didn't really see that on the ground. You saw that when you got home and people were like, I can't believe you made that much money. And I'm like, yeah, I can't believe you have free healthcare for your wife and shit while I was over there. Like, dude, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, there's positives and negatives to it, right? It's you have the whole protection of the U.S. military and CASEVAC and everything else, but then you're getting paid shit pay and have to sweep fucking floors at the end of the day. And then you guys are making more money, but you don't have that kind of backup support. You don't have that kind of access to resources sometimes too. But you guys are also doing a completely different mission than them. You're doing the diplomat escort. You're doing these types of things. But like, I think there's this big misconception. Oh, Blackwater's this assassination black squad, and they're just going out there taking out like individual dudes. And I'm like, okay, they're not a bunch of fucking Jason Bournes. I don't really think that's how that works, right?
Dude, I worked with some Jason Bourne motherfuckers, right? Like I worked with a guy. In Black Hawk Down, he was Hoot, and I know he was
really
amalgamation. Yeah, so I worked with that guy. I worked with a bunch of CAG dudes, SEAL Team 6 guys. They were bad motherfuckers, but they'd also tell you that none of that shit happens on its own, right? Like they have all this support. They have all these amazing like things that are supporting them through these missions. So the one thing. There was 2 contracts. There was a number of them, but you had a Department of State contract and then you had the CIA contract, which later was called GRS. So if you guys are big fans of Sean Ryan, he was on like one of the GRS contracts, the 13 hours guys, those are GRS contracts. The thing is that here's what I was told, and I can't confirm this, but with the CIA contract, the CIA guys were going in and starting to take down some high-level terrorists. And the people that were protecting them, the Blackwater guys, were like, you guys are so fucked up, you're going to get us killed. So the Blackwater guys would go in there, they'd clear the rooms, they'd do whatever they have to do. And then they'd send the CIA guys in after them to like, bag and tag and take credit for it. But that's the closest thing to direct action that I ever heard of happening. Dude, it could all just be bullshit. But here, dude, I'll tell you the one thing I thought was bullshit in 05. My buddy's like, dude, $1,000 a day. We're going to go run diamonds in Africa. And I was like,
run diamonds in Africa.
Yeah. I was like, fuck you, dude. There's no fucking way. Like, I'm not even that crazy. And I thought it was
I've seen
bullshit.
Blood Diamond. I know what happens.
That didn't
fucking an MI-24 comes out of nowhere, and then everyone's driving around in fucking Land Cruisers, and then all these people start disappearing, right?
Dude, so it turns out in the news, the guy, he's a former SAS guy, and in 04 and 05, that's what he was doing, is he was running fucking diamonds through Africa, and it was a legitimate contract. He was a contractor, and I was like, son of a bitch, that was a real contract? Like, dude, yeah, you never, it's such a weird world, man. You just never know.
I'm sure it is. And it's like, you know, like the war junkies get addicted to that stuff. You know, a lot of those guys, you know, like once you taste it, like, you know, you get really addicted to it. But I think, you know, even like we said before we started the podcast, I think, you know, and you've had way more experience than me, but like, you know, once you taste it, you start seeing the realities of what's going on. Your perception and your mindset changes about like, you know, what's going on over there and what we're doing, because especially what we deal with now is that Americans are so insanely blind to the reality of war and the reality of what's going on overseas, is that they will believe every 30-second TikTok video that they can. They think they're world-renowned experts because they read a bunch of Twitter comments, you know, and this is actually why I interview guys like you. And this is why I interview so many different people and talk to them, because I think it's so important to be transparent about the reality of war and what's going on. And like one of the interesting experiences I had, which I'd love your opinion on this, is like I was over there for the invasion of Ukraine, right? So I was one of the first intel analysts pulling data and watching these things going on overseas. And, you know, for, you know, a lot of people don't understand, it is not what you think it is. It is not what you think it is. Right. It's actually really concerning. And then, like, you know, can't talk about certain things. We have to sit there and shut our mouths and sit there and just let it play out. And you're just like, oh my God. And then, you know, watching all the buildup in Israel before October 7th, because we left country right before they clicked that off. And I'm just like, well, I mean, we saw that coming from like a million miles away. And if anyone's been to the fucking Middle East, you know how these people operate. So I love your opinion on, like, from your perspective and your war mindset and the things that you dealt with and things that you saw. Like, what is your message concerning a lot of those incidents that are going on today for the American public?
Fuck them, dude. Let them fight it out. Like,
there we go.
Well, because at the end of the day, we've never gone into some place under any auspices and it ended up coming out better. You know, maybe Panama, but that doesn't count. That was like fucking 30 seconds. I know.
Yeah.
It keeps getting, I'm doing girl math on it, but what you realize is that until you leave, until you don't have like your big brother standing around, these people will never figure out how to have peace. No. And when you have the big bad Americans and they're siding with the Iraqi government, and that happens to be the Shias now instead of the Sunnis under Saddam Hussein, like, you've always got that guy. Now, look, they're starting to figure it out. 20 years later, they're starting to finally figure it out, I guess. I don't know. I don't hear about the news that it's blowing up every day. I know it's not great, but it's not as bad as when we were there.
It's still the same tribal bullshit. Like when I was there, it's like these fucking clowns, the three groups are still fighting over who's doing this and who's parked in whose parking spot. So he blows up that car, you know, and then parks it down the street, and then they sell a bunch of t-shirts, they throw them on each other's face, and they light some other statue on fire. Like, it's definitely not as violent, you know, as blatantly violent, but it's like, it's still the same exact groups of people doing the same stupid stuff over and over again.
Well, dude, and I think until you've experienced war, you don't realize how absolutely savage it is, right? There's a lot of guys that, you know, they got into the military after we started leaving Iraq and Afghanistan, and they feel like they missed their wars. And dude, they did. And that sucks to a certain extent, right? Like, you don't learn how to plumb and then be like, I've never fixed a fucking toilet, right? Like, the reason why you become a plumber is to go, you know, unclog a toilet every once in a while.
Right.
But at the same time, for the people that experienced it on the ground, it is fucking savage. You would be shocked at what a human can do to another human being. And dude, I put myself in that because I was to a point where I didn't give a shit. And I remember we were driving around this traffic circle. And if you've been to Baghdad, you know that every car is a hunk of shit. They're all gross. They're all dirty. It's disgusting. This was the nicest car. It was a white Kia, dude. I remember I see this thing in my dreams. Like, it was that nice, that pristine for this area. Didn't get out of our way. We hit him with the Humvee, takes his entire trunk and mushes it into the back seat to where I can see in the trunk as we're driving past. And dude, every part of my being is like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, this guy, that was his baby. This was everything. Like, he wouldn't keep it this nice in this place if he didn't love this with all of his heart. And as we drove past, I fucking put my rifle in his face and yelled, "Get the fuck out of our way next time." Because, dude, like, for some reason, like, in my heart, I knew this was savage, but like, I was just so fucking fed up and so pissed off.
Yeah.
But on the opposite side of it, like, you watch all these war movies, right? You watch Band of Brothers and shit, and it's following all these Americans and they're killing the bad guys. You don't realize the toll that takes on you if you're the person that's actually like shooting the bad guys. You don't realize the toll that it takes on like the other side when you like, dude, when you lose a buddy and something as stupid as this fucking war that we had in Iraq, like it still and like, I mean, it doesn't really bother me to this day, right? Like, we signed up for it, but at the same time, like, you see how worthless it is. And what I say is that war is toxic, but it is intoxicating. It is.
Yeah, it's a good
you
point.
know it's fucking bad for you. You like when you're doing it, when you're fucking in the middle of it, you know how bad it is for you. And then when you leave, you're like, I want it again. Like, but like, let's roll. Get me back over there. And that's what kind of alluding to what you were saying, like the war hunters, the guys that are out there that just keep doing this stuff, is nothing will give you as big a high. I don't know. I've never done meth, but nothing will give you as big a high as being in combat, dude. And then when you come home, it like everything is so dull. It just feels dull, and it's just you, and it's like your thoughts and your dreams, and you're like, fuck, I'd rather just go back. I'm more comfortable over there. At least I know I could die. Here, I'm just like fucking blown out of my mind.
And everyone knows, like, even though the Hurt Locker was kind of bullshit, like, in terms of, like, that's not what actually happens. Like, I think they portray that really well at the end of the movie. Like, you know, the guys are just addicted to literally trying to kill themselves, trying to disarm bombs, right? As blown out of proportion as that was. And then you see him, like, when he goes back, and he just literally stands in the cereal aisle and just stares at all the choices of cereal and has, like, nothing to say because he's so confused about, like, how mundane and easy and clean everything is, and how I could just have any cereal I want whenever I want, and like I'm just listening to elevator music and watching blondes push their kids around in a baby carriage, and like, you know, like literally like a month or so ago, like he was pulling a bomb out of some kid's chest that was selling him DVDs on the side of the road, so to speak, right? Like, and yeah, I would agree. I mean, like I said, definitely was not involved in the level of combat you were, but like when you're over there and you're seeing all the stuff and you're involved in the things that like 99.9% of the world will never see, it is addicting, you know, and you're just like, you know, and for most part, like you feel like you're making a difference. Like in the moment, you know, some of the missions we get called up on, like, hey, we need to come to the talk real quick. We got this kicking off. We got, you know, this airstrike going in here, or these guys are moving in here, or fucking Rangers are going in here. Okay, cool. And then you get there and you're like, oh yeah, we did something really cool today. We did this. Then you go stand outside and the sand blows in your face and the shit fucking burners are going on. And you're just like, what the fuck is this shithole of a country I'm standing in, you know? And then you go back home and it's just like, all right, yeah, well, you know, back to my normal day job where people are bitching about the Denver Broncos losing again. You know what I mean? And it's just like
the price of milk, the price of eggs.
The price of eggs. Right. Shut up, hippie. Like, you know what I mean? Like nerds. That's what I call it. You know, like I said, it's just, it's one thing I encourage, like most Americans, like, you know, would you ever have your kids join the military today under all these things going on? I'm like, yeah, man, I think you should. I think, in my personal opinion, I think everyone should be required to join the military or some kind of public service for at least 2 years. Like, you need to really step out of your comfort zone. You need to really, like, give back and understand, like, how awesome the United States is. Like, every time I've been to a third world country shithole, I swear to God, I come back and I salute my toilet just because it flushes in the right direction and it's not covered in like feces all over the lid, or it's some kind of hole in the ground in the middle of nowhere. Or if I drink the water, I get sick and shit my brains out for 4 days. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
people
the book's got a lot of dysentery in there. Ooh,
a lot of dysentery overseas.
Oof.
People like take that stuff for granted, man. And then you watch all the stupid stuff of people fighting in this country about like all the time. And it just wraps my brain. I'm like, what are we wasting our time for? You know what I mean? Like I said, before the podcast even kicked off, I'm like, I got some person in leadership in the state of Colorado was like emailing me saying, like, I can't believe that you are talking on podcasts about these representatives and how corrupt they are. And I sat there and went, yeah, man, I am, because these are the types of people that send people like us to go out and do their bidding again. And I think it's if it's not for people like us having these discussions, we're going to continue to send our future generations to fight the same dumb wars and the same dumb conflicts and have the same dumb resolutions, which is nothing, right?
Oh yeah, no, we freed the shit out of those guys. Let's be honest. They're
Yeah.
just
What are you talking
they're
about?
so
Yeah.
happy now.
You killed like 2
have
million of them. They're free as fuck.
and democracy. Afghanistan, Ukraine, those guys are like the bastions of democracy now.
These people don't understand. Like these people overseas, like they will never ever go to that type of government. It's never going to happen. You know what I mean? Like we're very lucky to live in a country that's only 250 years old, or we somewhat figured it out, minus like the so-called, oh, we're going to fall like the Roman Empire again. Okay, well, whatever. I'll be dead before that happens, hopefully. But, you know, but
I want to be like the guy in Pompeii that was like squeezing one out, dude, when have you seen that picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I'm going to be that guy. Like if the fall of the United States happens, I'm going to be like, I'm going out the way I want.
Yeah, I just people take their safety and security for granted, and their so-called constitutional republic, or everyone calls it a democracy, even though we're not a democracy, over and over again. But like, you know, they're not the ones with any skin in the game. They're not the ones that are going overseas and running and gunning and doing these things like you did. You know what I mean? And I think you being able to give these perspectives on things is like invaluable, because people don't hear these stories, especially the young kids coming up. You know, because obviously you're a little bit older than I am. You know what I mean? But like the younger kids coming up behind me, like when if I grow my beard out, I'll see the gray. But you know, unfortunately, I'm still in, so I can only keep my my so-called Intel Hitler stash currently. Once you're Intel, if you don't have a mustache, nobody takes you seriously in any battalion meeting or something like that. It's 100% accurate. I'll even put the blue filtering glasses on, even because I don't need glasses, but it just so I look smart. I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to go through this PowerPoint briefing, and you're going to listen to me now because I look more intelligent. Like, literally.
You do. I was like, oh, dude, that was like straight up Clark Kent shit right there.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the kids some of the kids I deployed with, man, like 18, 19 years old, who were born after 9/11, right? Which is nuts to think about. Like, they're like, who's Osama bin Laden? I'm like, wait, we're in CENTCOM, and you guys don't know who bin Laden is. I'm just like, all right. Gather around Papa Dorito, and he's gonna give you a briefing about what the World Trade Center was. You know what I mean? And but I mean, if it's not for guys like you telling your story like you are today, you know, and I really want you to talk more about the second part of your book, Girls. We haven't gotten to that part yet. You know, is telling the younger generations coming up that are going to replace us, like what this is like, what they need to look forward to, and how they can avoid, or, you know, making some of the same mistakes that you and I had made over the years in our younger years, right? So go on to the next part. We talked about the guns. What about the girls?
Oh, dude, I'm gonna tell you straight up. There are no girls. There are no girls in Baghdad.
I was gonna ask. I'm like,
there were some girls, like the State Department. Dude, there was a bar underneath the hotel. Fuck, I can't remember the name of the hotel. God, it's been too long. But there was a hotel. It had a bar, had a club, and then that's where like all the agency people go, CIA, NSA, all that stuff. You go there and you party, and you got this girl that's like, you know, a low-level diplomat that's grinding on a Blackwater guy in the bar, with pictures. I got pictures of that. But here's what happens, dude. Is this is a conversation topic? You're always going to talk about girls, and I will tell you the worst kept secret that nobody knows is that special operations guys love hookers, dude. They love hookers. Whether they're going to Iraq, whether they were coming back, dude, there was going to be a stopover. There's going to be a hooker. Now, I can't tell you. I probably put in like 1/20th of the stories that I have about hookers in here, but a lot of it is just like the hooker stories of being like, I mean, dude, here's my favorite one. This guy's like, yeah, I went to the Netherlands and I went to a brothel, and I was like, oh, like the red light district. He's like, no, dude, like the classy ones, you fucking dumb, retarded redneck, like the nice one where you go in and you get to pick the girls. And he's like, they line these girls up. I'm on this leather seat and I'm reclined back, you know, I got a cigar, and I see this Vietnamese girl, and I was like, I gotta have her. So like they take us back to the room. There's silk sheets, very nice stuff, high-end hooker. And he's like, she blows me for a while, and then I lay back on the bed, and she's like squatting on top of me, getting ready to ride me. And he's like, and dude, I gotta say something. Like, I don't know why I shouldn't say anything, but I gotta say something. And he's like, so where are you from? And she's like, Vietnam. And he's like, oh, she's like this close to, like, I'm this close to being inside her. Like, oh my God, she's so close. And he's like, well, where from in Vietnam? And she looks at him and says, the place you bombed.
Oh my God.
And I was like, you gotta be shitting me. Here's the beauty of like hooker stories is that the worst hooker stories are the best stories, right? Nobody's like, hey, man. I got a hooker, it took me 30 seconds. I gave her a hair shot in Germany on the way home. Like, dude, you would be shocked at how many horrible hooker stories are. But dude, we stayed at it's called the Bristol Hotel in Jordan, and they had like,
I know where that is. I was there. I was in Jordan.
Yeah, so Russian immigrants, dude. There's like this bar, and there was always hookers. You could go get a massage, and then at the end, they're like, "Can I help you out with anything else?" So I got there. My buddy Eric and Tony were there, and they were all like, "Oh, we're gonna get massages, dude." I never had a massage, right? Like who the fuck gets massages? But I was like, dude, I've been here for 6 months. I can pay $100 for a massage. So Eric gets his massage, Tony gets his massage, I get my massage. Dude, we're having dinner that night, and Eric's like, did you guys get your massage? That's how we talk. You get your massage? I was like, yeah, dude. He's like, she jerked me off. No. Yeah, he's like, yeah, dude, she jerked me off. And then my buddy Mike's like, I fucked her. And he's like, did you look at her hand while you fucked her? Because she just got done jerking me off. And then they're like, what about you, Morgan? I was like, no, I just legitimately got a massage. And they're like, after I fucked her, did she use that same hand that she jerked me off with to massage her back?
Jesus.
I'm like, oh my God, dude. So I mean, girls, it's always like, who are you dating? Who are you with? Like the dumb, bored GI stories about girls, but the hooker stories are, dude, chef's kiss, dude.
I was just a support guy in group, but some of the stories I heard from some of the green hats, and all the other stuff that they were doing out in Latvia and all the other places they were assigned, like, it's just absolutely insanity. And you even talked to, the other guys on I Came with Fire, and Chris is an 18 Delta, and it's like some of the stories he tells me, I'm just like, you got to get out of here. Like, but people don't understand that, like, oh my, and it sounds horrible, right? Like, oh my God, guys are overseas shooting guns and killing innocent people and fucking hookers. And I sat there and just went like, I don't think you understand what men resort to in those types of environments. You know what I mean? When you're exposed to those type of environments, like, it gets extremely primitive. Like, human instinct goes very, very basic at that point. And I think
straight Maslow's like bottom of the pyramid, dude. Yeah.
And that's how it is. But unless you've been exposed to that, like, other than getting like lost in the woods hunting or something, and you got to survive, like, and maybe figure it out. It's just that is part of the reality of the psychology of war. And a lot of people just can't fathom or understand that. I just find it fascinating. You get all these hearings and all these congressional testimonies and all the stuff about all these guys doing XYZ, even like what happened in Haditha when those with those Marines, like when they got shot at, their one buddy went down and they just went through and they leveled that town. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they killed everybody. I mean, I'm just like, yeah, I mean, like, hindsight's 2020. Was that the moral and ethical thing to do? No, but in the moment when you're getting shot at and you're getting blown up, like, the instinct comes out. The primitive actions go into effect, and it's like I said, unless you've been exposed to those environments, how could you possibly even begin to judge people in those moments? So,
well, dude, and I mean, you're overseas for 6 months, right? So my first contract, 6 months. Blackwater is usually 6 months. All it is anxiety and testosterone, right? Now, whether or not it was testosterone from like, holy crap, like just elevated anxiety to, the steroids I was sticking right in my ass because we were all fucking roided out. You come home and like, what's your release? And that's why it's like, it's exceptionally difficult. Like, I understand grabbing a hooker on your way home if you're a single dude. I'm not saying all of them were single dudes, but like, it goes down to it. It's like bodily functions, sex, fucking survival. Like that is literally all you're talking about, which is, it's shocking that you can have these conversations. But I mean, we had one guy, he was at that sweet club that I was telling you about underneath the hotel, and he hooked up with a Iraqi translator that worked for the State Department. He's like, dude, her bush started like way above her belly button, dude. It was the craziest, biggest bush I've ever seen in my life. And we're like, oh, take pictures.
Oh, that's fucked up. Yeah, but I mean, no, you're right though. I mean, and like I said, it's just unless you've tasted it, like, how could you possibly judge it? People go back to like, even like World War II, the horrific things that went on during there, and like, even like what happened in Chechnya in 2000 with Putin. It's just like, history repeats itself, man, over and over again. You can't imagine. I mean, look at like the rape of Nanking. Like even in Japan and China. Like this stuff has been part of warfare for the entirety of human history. We're just better at recording it and telling stories about it now. And
Yeah,
people
dude, I
just don't
think
want to talk about
missionary
it.
work is right up there with prostitution. It's like one of the oldest fucking jobs
Pretty
that has
much.
ever existed. So, and I mean, maybe that's a good segue.
Yeah.
You
Talk to
you
me
know
about
what?
the greed.
Oh, dude, the greed is fucking, dude. I mean, you're
It's like three
making so
kings
much
walking
money.
out with walking
I
out with
was
gold
making
bars in
so much
Saddam's
money at
bunkers.
23. And I got some buddies that are still in the game. There's a new contract in Gaza where they're going to be dropping off U.S. aid inside Gaza. It's a U.S. private military contracting firm, which means it's not associated with any U.S. entity. It's not under the State Department, USAID, nothing. It's
Right.
under Israel, Egypt, you name it. You
Yeah.
got PMCs over in the Ukraine and Syria. They're in Libya. I know they're still in Libya because one of those dipshits is going on Strava and being like, I just ran 4 miles in fucking Libya. What a dipshit. Anyway,
Yeah, stop doing that.
That's the GSR contract. Those guys are still dumb. But what we're moving towards is we no longer have the appetite to put boots on the ground. Dudes like you and I are like, fucking, this is stupid. Why'd we fight over it? And we're the fighting, we're conservatives. We're the guys that go out and usually fight, right?
Yep.
So they're putting private military contractors into these combat zones, and they're creeping closer and closer and closer to the actual front lines. Yeah. And that's where I see this going, is that we're going to end up putting contractors in harm's way, and then something bad is going to happen. And if you can't shush it, and it gets out like, the Fallujah Bridge when nobody even knew what Blackwater was, and all of a sudden everybody knows what Blackwater is, and we got to get retribution, that's going to change our war policy. So we're fighting wars by PMC proxy, and how does that turn out good? And my hypothesis is, if you don't have the balls to put the boots on the ground, don't fucking put PMCs over there, because either way you're putting U.S. civilians in danger.
This is actually a good question to kind of go along with what you're saying. Is I dealt a lot with Wagner Group out in Syria, and they're basically the Blackwater of Russia, right? The little different setup and organization, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, but it was very, very interesting to see how they operate and the things that they were doing, because before Gaza kicked off, before anything happened in Ukraine, like, you saw them working in the background. And you saw them, you're watching them on a satellite, or you got ISR, and you're watching them do this stuff, and you're like, these motherfuckers are really going to do this, aren't they? You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of the predecessors, and I'm sure they do the same thing with us. I think we're a lot better at hiding our guys versus out in the open like they do. Like, we could see you. Turn off your cell phone, idiots. But like, what that is such a good point, is that we are now resulting to using PMCs, or like Russians use a Wagner Group, and then we are slowly encroaching on the front lines of actual modern conventional conflict, and what the repercussions are of that. Like, what do you see that as moving forward? Because you kind of dove into it a little bit, but I mean, I think it's extremely freaking dangerous, because people don't understand the ins and outs of how these organizations work. But like, when you're a civilian on the ground, your house gets blown up, you see a bunch of guys roll by in a machine gun truck, you don't care if they're Blackwater or they're Wagner Group or they're the Ukrainians or the Russians. You just know that there's a guy with a gun and he's shooting at me, right? Like, political things can happen very quickly with those types of situations. So,
yeah, I mean, Wagner's a little bit different because they are like an actual army, a military force, right?
Yeah, they're just run by the oligarchs.
Right? Yeah, but I mean, like, so Blackwater, US PMCs, mostly, dude, PMCs are everywhere. They're all through Europe. They're in China.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric Prince, when he got done with Blackwater, went and started Frontier Services Group that is backed by the CCP. It's funny because he drapes himself in the flag, but dude, he was straight up being funded by the CCP, and they were doing Belt and Road shit, out in Africa.
Yeah.
I think it's dangerous, and I'll tell you that right now Eric Prince is in the DRC for a rare earth minerals deal. Who do you think is going to protect that shit? Right? It's not going to be U.S. soldiers. It's going to be PMCs. Ukraine, we just did the mineral deal with the Ukrainians. Who's going to fucking protect that? It's going to be PMCs. And I think we're taking them as like a necessity, right? Like I said earlier, you had to have somebody come in and protect these diplomats because we were fucking horrible at planning the war. Let's be honest here. But there was a necessity, right? The same way that Walmart gets contractors to help you through checkout during Christmas. It's a necessity. You need these people. You need an influx of bodies that can do something. Now it's no longer a necessity. It's more like a way to skirt around the legality of it. And you've been seeing this for years, right? Like the Raven 23 guys, the guys that were in Nisser Square that ended up getting prosecuted. Those guys were political scapegoats, and I'm not trying to be like hua, but like at the end of the day, they did not get due process. They did not have somebody go in and do a crime scene and dust for prints and any of that shit. You can't do that in combat zones. Yeah. So you start looking at the legality. This is what opened my eyes, the legality of it. So the FBI was over top of them. But as far as I was told, dude, the State Department, and we all had diplomatic immunity, and we had State Department passports. Anyway, I digress. But when you start taking these PMCs and you're protecting mineral rights over in the Ukraine or the DRC, or you're doing this shit in Gaza, who has jurisdiction over you? Because it's not the UCMJ, not the Geneva Convention. It's not U.S. laws because you're on somebody else's property. If you're working for a corporation that's multinational, like it creates this legal ambiguity that essentially when something bad happens, people have to jump in and say, who actually has jurisdiction over these people? And I think that that's the beauty of it from like a corporate standpoint, from a political standpoint, is nobody blames the State Department for what happened in Nisser Square. They blame Blackwater.
Right.
So you have a nice scapegoat if you're a politician, but at the same time, if you're the dude on the ground and you're being prosecuted under a law that you didn't even know applied to you, you're kind of fucked. Like,
yeah. Like, so does like Interpol take over that? You know what I mean? Like, does The Hague, the International War Convention, like criminal court or whatever? Like, that's interesting because it's kind of like, you know, but then again, the International Criminal Court, the ICR, or whatever the heck they want to call themselves now. I mean, they're the ones who are like, oh, we're gonna put Putin and Netanyahu out on a warrant. It's like, okay, like, good luck, you know?
Well, right, dude. I mean, a lot of the laws aren't going to have teeth, but at the same time, like if you have, like Biden said, we're essentially going to prosecute these Blackwater guys, and they did, and every time they got, you know, essentially got thrown out of court, they went after them again and again and again. So my concern is the PMC career field keeps expanding, but the legality of it and the liability that you have as the person on the ground, I would never do it in its current day and age. One fuck up, and dude, you're going to change the entire political spectrum. You know, foreign policy, right? You Blackwater Bridge guys, we weren't going into Fallujah until the Blackwater guys got strung off the bridge. Then we had to go into Fallujah. Then we stopped. Then we went into Fallujah again, November 2004. Our entire war policy changed. Yeah. Then you have Nisser Square. Our foreign policy, our diplomatic policy changed. You have to kick Blackwater out, and you have to get all these new people. Not really. Triple Cabinet came in and hired all the Blackwater guys the next day. But like it has the ability to put you as like the knuckle dragger, the guy that's just over there licking windows at the forefront of fucking foreign policy and prosecution. And I wouldn't do it anymore. But I'm old.
Yeah, but it is like super high risk now because, and you bring up something very interesting, which I think maybe people like kind of miss this entire point. Yeah, there's war, and war is fun. And then everyone thinks about Ukraine and Gaza is about freedom and democracy of the Palestinians and Ukrainians. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. You know, you are bringing up something very important. We're like, hey, why is Eric Prince down the DRC? Why are we doing these deals in Ukraine for the rare earth mineral access? You know, this is all for the strategic advantage of the respective countries trying to fight over these territorial areas. In reality, our government, and same thing with the Russians, they don't really care about the freedom and democracy or any of these areas. We want to take your shit or control the people that allocate those energy resources or rare earth mineral resources, right? You know, because if we cared so much about humanity, we probably would have gotten involved in Rwanda. But you know what? We didn't. We let a couple million people die and get hacked down by machetes. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing that Rwanda offered us, so we didn't get involved. And Bill Clinton's like, oh, sorry. You know, I'm just going to let Monica take care of this over here when nobody's paying attention, right?
Dude,
but
I mean, like about that last night. The president was sticking cigars up an intern's badge and handing them out like, man, and he's still politically viable. Like how, like Like,
and then we look at like what's going on in today, and you're like, you guys care about this?
Yeah, like, dude, that's so amazing. Like, I mean, dude, the fact that you could talk somebody into sticking a cigar up their vag is one thing. And dude, I'm just going off tangentially, but like, but then to be like golfing with your buddies and be like, smell this vintage Cuban, and they're like, oh, it smells like fish. And he's like, yeah. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
must have been crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, like, people talk about like scandals, like for example, people are like, oh my God, Trump is accepting a $400 million gift from the Qataris from a Boeing 747. I'm like, well, one, it's probably still a third of the cost than if we had bought that ourselves because Boeing can't figure their shit out right now. And two, like, this has gone completely under the radar. No one's been paying attention to it. But I mean, the guy just signed like multi-trillion-dollar deals with Qatar and Saudi. And this is actually really good talking about what you were discussing with Eric in the Belt and Road Initiative, right? Because when I was over there, the Belt and Road Initiative was a huge deal with China and Russia, right? Is because a lot of these Middle Eastern countries, when I was over there in the early 2020s, like they are switching alliances to the Russians and the Chinese because, yeah, great, you sold us a bunch of Abrams tanks. Thank you. But what they do is they just dry rot in the desert because these guys don't know how to use them, and they just look cool, and they use them for their parades for 5 minutes before they trash them. You know, the same thing with the Apaches we sell them, right? They just sit there and dry rot. What these people really need is access to food, water, and electricity because it's a desert and there's nothing out there, right? So I got to give a lot of credit to the current administration because now they're trying to buy back that influence by doing trade and negotiation deals, which is exactly what we needed to do over there, which is why the Qataris and the Saudis were like, oh, you guys actually want to do business deals and actually start doing trade agreements over the Chinese? Yeah, how much money do you want? Because we have unlimited amounts of money. You know what I mean? Well, we'll line up all the horses and we're going to trot in the president's limousine. We're going to give you a jet because that's a spare one we have because we have 30 of them sitting over there. You know what I mean? People don't understand, like, there's actually a huge benefit to actually doing business and mineral resource relations deals with these guys because they have so much money and power and influence. They don't care who you are. They just care that is it going to benefit them and their people to avoid having a revolt against, you know, their respective kingdoms, right? And the people in Iraq and Kuwait and Qatar, they're starting getting really pissed off because they're had to get all their food from like India and stuff now because they weren't getting it from Ukraine because that supply line got cut off in Syria. So where's their food going to come from? They were working with the Chinese and Indians after that, right? Because they only care about that stuff. So doing a big trade deal like that and undermining everything that's been going on with the Chinese, it was a hugely smart idea on the Trump administration side, in my opinion, because those guys are for sale to the highest bidder. Every single one of those Middle Eastern countries, they don't care who you are. It's how much money are you going to make me? And as a result, how much money do you want to ensure that this alliance keeps going forward? Right. And they want to solidify themselves against Iran, too. They all, in general, kind of hate Iran. You know what I mean? Because Iran's like causing them, they're like the Joker and throwing a fork in the garbage disposal all the time. You know what I mean? Like they just cause them constant problems. So if you want to solidify a defense deal for Saudi and Kuwait and Qatar and all these countries that is going to guarantee you trillions of dollars of business investment in the United States, and in return, you guys open up your agricultural resources and food access for their people. What do you want? How many hookers do you want? We don't care because that is how those people work. And people view it as corruption here in the United States. I sat there and just went, you need to go to Dubai. You need to see how these people, it's business as usual. This is so normal for them. And people just don't understand that at all.
I know, dude, baby oil pools. Like, dude, let's fucking, dude, Diddy got that idea from somebody. He didn't make that shit up. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, people don't understand the amount of fuck you money in the Middle East. Like it's mind blowing. Like these kids, there's like Mercedes dealerships in like the malls, and like you just go buy one, just drive it out there, go wreck it, and then go pick up another one. Like same thing with Lambos. They don't even change the oil in them. They just rip them down the highways until they blow up, and then they just go buy another one. Like they don't care. Like these people are just out of their minds over there. It's insane.
when I was at Officer Basic course with we had like the Saudis there. This guy's like, hey Dad, I want to go buy this like Toyota Land, I don't know, but dude, like a 4Runner, and his dad literally wired him like $500,000 and said, buy everyone on the lot and then bring all the rest home when you come home. Like, dude, it's like the money. The thing is that they have all this money from oil revenue, but they don't have the necessities, right? The food,
exactly.
The water,
you can't eat money. You can't eat money. You could burn it to keep yourself warm, but you can't eat money. So when they have another nation like what they were doing with China and India when I was over there, it's like, all right, look, we'll give you all the oil you want. and all the money trade you want, because money means nothing to us. We have so much of it, we don't care. As long as you give us weekly shipment containers full of food and vegetables and rice.
And chicken curry is what gives you dysentery anyway, so fuck it, dude. Like,
exactly. And now I think this is going to be a great deal with the agricultural community here in the United States, right? Is that we start supplying the Middle East with food because Ukraine is not viable right now because when I was over there, they were getting I think over 65% of the grain in the Middle East comes from the Ukraine, right? So when you shut off that access, they're going to get pretty desperate to figure out where their food's going to come from. Otherwise, are people going to uprise? And India is currently the world's largest country, and they have extra food to sell, but you don't really want to trust that Indian food, and their 1.2 billion people need it too, or whatever it is, right? So it was a hugely smart political move in my mind. It's whatever. Trump got a free jet and a bunch of horses and a fighter jet escort, which are our jets anyway. You know what I mean? And then they look cool. They take all their Instagram photos, but I mean, those are the types of deals that go on in the Middle East, right? And pursuant to that, it actually reduces what you were talking about, the amount of PMCs we need operating in these countries, right? Because if you are inferring stability through these economic trade deals and these business agreements, then you don't need guys rocking and rolling and stealing people's shit and blowing it up and taking it anyway, which is, or ensuring that those government contract vehicles can get through and, secure those resources like we're going to have to do in Ukraine. I'm a civil affairs guy now, and when I left Special Forces, as a rigger, and I went over to civil affairs, I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting because we're going to be doing this for 20, 30 years. It's going to be a long time, and all their infrastructure is gone. You know what I mean? And now we're going to have to mine for all this stuff, and then you're not going to have 101st Airborne out there hanging out. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's the PMC involvement in the future in obtaining these resources and countering the Belt and Road Initiative from China and the Russian involvement is going to be a very interesting, real world problem to deal with.
Yeah, I just hope Eric Prince brings back Blackwater so that I can sell more books. Other than that.
He had to change the name though, 4 times though. Then
well, I know, but now I'm hoping that he wants to bring back the Blackwater thing so that I can, bring back the brand. I just need the brand,
Yeah. For me, because he did that interview, was he on Sean Ryan's podcast? Was that the interview he did?
Yeah.
I forget which one he was on, but I was just like, can you imagine if Eric Prince got nominated to be SecDef and just just make every, I'm like, I'm just that would be interesting. That would be a fascinating thought experiment.
I wrote an article why he would be the worst SecDef, and it's pretty much because Rumsfeld came from private, from private company and tried to privatize everything, and that's essentially why you have all these PMCs that were on the ground. And I do, call me a hypocrite, call me whatever you want. I made my money and I left, but I don't think you fight wars with PMCs, and by doing that, you're just scapegoating the guys on the ground while giving political cover for other guys and making businesses a bunch of money. And dude, I'm all about making businesses a bunch of money, but
it's not sustainable though. There's no way PMCs can do sustainment operations the way a conventional military can, right? And I'm interested in your thoughts on this. So I remember when you were getting towards the tail end of Afghanistan, and Eric Prince was pretty much just pretty much basically let Blackwater take over, and we'll win this war. I was just like, ooh, that's interesting, Eric. How are you going to do that? Because these people have worked with that type of system for so long. I don't know if Blackwater could have won Afghanistan.
Couldn't have. It was a stupid plan, but from a dollars and cents standpoint, it would have been more cost effective to try to get Blackwater guys on there. Plus, you don't have to worry about them rotating back to their families and downtime and all the other stuff. PMCs will always keep chasing the dragon. They just will. So, but I don't know. Dude, I know the guy reads a lot of history and I know he's well educated. Mm-hmm. I can tell you the one story about Eric Prince is when we started taking indirect fire and he was in Baghdad, his bodyguards whisked him away. They were running away. And everybody else in Blackwater that had been there was just standing tall, hey, this is a normal Tuesday, dude.
Interesting.
So Eric Prince is not a war fighter. He's a great businessman. Good on him. He went through SEAL, dude, all that other shit. But at the end of the day, he was the CEO of Blackwater. He was not the fry cook, right? You don't want the CEO of McDonald's checking on everybody and how they're making fries. Let us make our own fucking fries. He did that really well. But the whole like patriotism after he did FSG and like I'm this big war fighter, fucking put in Eric Prince, dude. I think he'd be terrible at it. Well,
I thought it was comical.
Yeah, but so I gotta jam out. You want?
Yeah,
dude, let's do this again in a couple weeks. Let's fucking do this when you get back from Normandy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sorry, I just get so wrapped up with these conversations. Like I'm actually genuinely fascinated by the stories you took. But hey, I'll definitely do a part 2 here in the future when I get back from France, because this one's gonna come out right after I get back. But we'll have to do this in the future. Morgan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This has been awesome. This has been so much fun learning about the Blackwater operations world. And where can people find your book? Where can people hook up with you on the internet?
Oh, dude, find me. I'm at Blackwater Dude and the number 1 at Blackwater Dude 1. I'm on TikTok if you want to see me shake these titties. Amazon is where you can get the book. The audio's out. Jay Moore, the comedian, actually read the audio book. So he hits the punchlines and the jokes. The place you bomb. He hits that pretty good. I'm not gonna lie to you. So, yeah, dude. I mean, check it out. Everybody I've talked to is like, this is the ground perspective of war that you don't get with generals and politicians. And Eric Prince writes books. This is like the no shit, dysentery, hooker stories. Fucking, how does it feel when you actually flick it off safe and you pull the trigger for the first time? Like, it's raw. It's nasty. Don't let your kids read it because I don't want to have to go to the principal's office. But fucking check it out.
Nah, I think the younger generations need that perspective of that raw, real, non-political perspective of the shit that our country sends us to get involved with. So thanks again. Make sure you guys get the book and look up Morgan on all the social media platforms, and we'll see you on part 2 here sometime in July. See you later.
All right, bro. So look forward to coming back, man.
All right.